Today's video dedication is for Whiskey Jack. Imodane versus Jingataxius. Okay, yeah, no ramp in that opening hand. Not sure if we're going to need burn to control our opponent during the opening game. He's probably just going to be holding up control magic himself, so go down a card here, try and get into some ramp like a mana vault. Keep that one. And I'll get rid of the... yeah, I suppose we could get into Furnace of Wrath. Let's get rid of the Bone Crusher Giant. And just hope that we get into some more burn. Mystical Tutor from our opponent during the main phase. And go straight in for a Frantic Search. Alright, draw into Volcanic Spite. So it's just a mountain into the Mana Vault. Our opponent playing double blue mana. And hopefully will not counter our next spell here. Alright, this draw gets us into double red. That's excellent. So crack the fetch land straight away. And then it's a case of, do we go for the Glittering Stockpile or our commander? I think we'll go for the Stockpile here. And our opponent was not holding up priority, so doesn't have any counter magic seemingly. We'll just play the Light Up the Stage, and we get into a Brash Taunter and a Mana Crypt, so throw that out as well. And we've got until next turn to play the Brash Taunter, which is why I decided to hardcast it there. Hopefully gets us a step closer to more red mana in the form of mountains as well. Have to assume our opponent's holding up Frantic Search, but could go for counter magic as well. We lose 4 life to our rocks in total this turn, and that's some more card advantage in the form of Ignite the Future, so let's try Imodane here. Our opponent just passing priority again straight away, so drop a land, we'll go for Volcanic Spite maybe, but wouldn't have thought we'd bother using that until Furnace of Wrath becomes available. Noteworthy, our opponent didn't go for the Frantic Search at the end of the turn there. Throwing out Aethran Dynamo now. Managed to draw into another land again, so that means that we've got 4 mana available for the Ignite the Future, and then 3 mana to hold up the Volcanic Spite. I think we're better just getting down the Furnace of Wrath whilst our opponent is shields down here. And this means that we're going to get to deal double commander damage here. Nothing to actually burn yet because we missed out on the Indestructible Goblin, which maybe should have played instead of the Imodane, but we've at least had a chance to get down the Furnace of Wrath now. Need to bear in mind that our opponent's commander does have Ward 2 as well, so going for Volcanic Spite onto that at the end of the turn won't necessarily be a good idea. So our opponent does get out the Jingataxius now. Could be holding up counter magic to protect that. Instead goes for the Frantic Search into his commander. So manages to draw a card with that. And it seems as though our opponent has the Labman combos in here. So we see a land discarded as well as Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, to the Frantic Search. And our opponent untaps his lands to that Frantic Search as well, so 4 cards in hand. And like I said, may well be holding up counter magic. It's noteworthy that we've got 2 damage dealing rocks here, and as well as that we've got double damage that we're taking here, so yeah, that Mana Crypt deals 6 damage to us, and we're about to take a further 2 to the Mana Vault, so yeah, need to hope that we can actually get some burn going here. Another mountain for us is fine. Let's go for Volcanic Spite onto the Jingataxius. Our opponent should have us pay for the ward cost here, and we will. And that lands, so not going to bother with the Ignite the Future, just going to burn out the Jingataxius. 6 damage on the Jingataxius means 12 damage from the Imodane, because that gets doubled up as well. So taking our opponent down to 20, and we'll swing in for a further 8 points of commander damage. We are actually threatening commander damage thanks to the Furnace of Wrath, knocking them down to 12. And let's go for tapping out into Ignite the Future. We've got until our next turn to play these things as well. So that is Liquimetal Torque, a Mithril Coat and another land, so clearing those 3 cards that are reasonably useless off the top is fine. 8 mana to flash that back, and I think we've got that available, especially if we crack this thing. Our opponent decided to bounce our commander with an Engulf the Shore, so not taking commander damage next turn most likely, unless we manage to get into some means of haste. And our opponent does seem to be holding up priority during our turn this time. Draw into a mountain, so we can play the mountain from exile and hold on to that one that's in our hand. And yeah, let's get down the Liquimetal Torque, and we'll try getting down our Imodane again. And if they counter this, then it's counter magic that's not being used on the burn at least. Okay, not going to use any counter magic, so we'll try the Mithril Coat. Just coming down onto our commander, we might as well. Got a nice number of stockpile counters on the Glittering Stockpile now. Going to protect ourselves against Pongify effects. Okay, and Imodane now indestructible. There are exile effects on creatures in mono blue, but obviously they can bounce as well. But hopefully Mithril Coat will help keep our commander in play. They've managed to buy themselves a turn. Now going for the Frantic Search, so yeah, there's Plea for Power and God Eternal Kefnet are the main concerns there really. So let's go with Plea for Power, or you can have those other 4, and we'll probably just give them the card draw for 3. Although they don't seem to be doing too well on their turns here, so maybe an extra turn isn't all that scary if they just tap out into their commander. Noteworthy that they did go for the Plea for Power there. Alright, so casting that straight away, their commander will cost 7 to get out. Not sure if they've made a land yet. Yes, they have played an island this turn, so shouldn't be able to get out their commander again. I think with 2 cards in hand, we actually just let them take an extra turn here. And they voted for time themselves, so we could tie the vote and get them to draw, but yeah, and it could be telling that they want an extra turn, but we'll let them have it and challenge them to do something with those 2 cards in hand. Like I said, if they voted for time themselves, then it could be telling that they actually want an extra turn. Decided to pass with that 6 mana held up though, so straight into the extra turn here. Not sure that that really punished us any. Okay, that's weird. Our opponent seems to be passing through the turn again, so challenging us to go for the win with commander damage here. We get a Pyromancer's Goggles, so yeah, not doing too well getting into the burn here, which seems to be quite a common occurrence in this deck. So let's just try and get through for the victory here. Could be that they're holding up Cyclonic Rift, but it's not something that we're going to play around anyway. Don't suppose tapping out all our lands is going to be particularly useful there. Okay, our opponent goes down to 4 and 24 points of commander damage. Yeah, not sure why he didn't play the Jingataxius again. He could have at least chump blocked us there. Imodane versus the Reality Chip this time, with no mountains for the Valor Cup, but we do have means of red mana, so yeah, let's try that. Expedition Map for our opponent. We'll search up any land next turn. We draw into Insult to Injury. So I'll just get down the Demolition Field here, and we'll go for the Rummaging on the Thrill of Possibility now. Get rid of Insult to Injury because it's a late game card. Alright, gets us into another land, but not doing too well on the red front here. Furnace of Wrath I have drawn into as a damage doubler / tripler more than any other card by quite a long ways. Our opponent not cracking the Expedition Map, going for Search for as counter instead. Alright, and there is the mountain, so good to clear those cards off the top previously. Don't think there's much point in going for the Jesker's Will here really. We want to be using it as card advantage as well. All it really does is get our commander down a turn sooner, so yeah, argument to be made for that. Maybe our opponent's holding up counter magic next turn. Yeah, we'll try just doing the red thing here. Making the red mana, I mean. It's noteworthy that we've got some burn available in the form of injury, thanks to us discarding it as well. Does have the aftermath cost. Expedition Map being cracked now, so it might be our opponent has a land but just wants to play out the land that he will reveal to us here. And it is a Field of Ruin, so our opponent worried about the Valor Cup. Does mean that we'll be able to go for another mountain, so I'm not particularly against that. We could blow up their Field of Ruin with Demolition Field, so just for the sake of getting triple red we'll go for Shatter Skull the Hammer Pass, and we will bolt that into play. So once again we're on the double commander damage plan, taking our opponent down to 32 and 8 commander damage. And Field of Ruin blowing up our... Okay, not going after Valor Cut, it is Demolition Field, so not sure what land he wants to play that he's so worried about us blowing up here. Getting us into another mountain makes the Tundra Fumarole better. Valor Cut obviously is better with more basics in play as well. Our opponent throws out the Reality Chip. We get into another mountain, means that we can maximise the amount of mana made from the Tundra Fumarole, which means we can go for both this and into the Maw of Hell next turn. So we swing him first of all, and that will make our Witchstalker Frenzy cost 1 less. Our opponent taking a further 8 points of commander damage, goes down to 24, will be 10 with this, and 18 in total with this, so yeah, maybe just trying to go for into the Maw of Hell next turn. Yeah, we'll just go for the Witchstalker Frenzy now, because obviously we're only going to have one creature to target, so we can't actually go for the Tundra Fumarole even if we want to. And it'll be fine going for that next turn. We'll generate the colourless mana from this, or not the colourless, the snow mana from this, that we can put into the Maw of Hell. And there's a Force of Will anyway, They exiled a Psychic Impetus for that, so maybe should have gone for the Tundra Fumarole, but we didn't know we'd need the mana in all fairness. Search for counter, having our opponent go for Castle Vantress into the bin, and draws them closer to counter magic maybe. They have a Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, and now we see Treachery from our opponent, and for some reason Treachery untaps 5 lands, so they generate even more mana with the Nykthos now. So generating 4 mana from Nykthos, able to hold up double blue for counter magic maybe. That is an Ether Channeler. Bounces our enchantment back to hand, and then it is Narset, Parter of the Veils. We're not likely to draw additional cards in this deck anyway. There's a lot of exiling off the top stuff. They reveal a Ponder to us, so we know they've got that in hand now. Obviously got that from ticking down on the Narset. And again, likely it's the Nykthos that they wanted to protect from the Demolition Field previously. Alright, so throw out the Arcane Lighthouse. We've got Virtue of Courage now. So I think we have to go for Tundra Fumarole. Now we'll put that onto our commander so that we can get it back. Our commander goes back into the command zone, then I think we can just play the Furnace of Wrath. An Ancient Tomb being binned for the Search for Azcanta this time, and it is flipped around, so we can gain card advantage for 3 mana and a tap. Minusing down on the Narset will reveal something else. And there is a Jace the Mind Sculptor, so we'll have to play out our commander into some form of burn now, which doesn't seem too likely against our opponent, unless we can get into some fast mana. A Telepathy allows them to look at our hand and best plan out their turns, and now playing the Ponder. Following that up with a Sleep Cursed Fae, comes in with some stun counters on it, and then equipping the Reality Chip to the Fae. And down to 2 cards in hand we see Malevolent Hermit. Don't have the mana held up for the Hermit though. We know one of the cards that's in their hand obviously. Deal 2 damage to us, or actually it's 4 damage thanks to the damage doubling. Okay, well there's a Mizium Mortars, so I think we have to go for that now. It gets the Reality Chip off a creature, meaning that they can't go for the card advantage off the top of their library with this. Does not deal with the Jace though, but it was never going to. Might be that our opponent plays out Jace and just goes for the Brainstorm on this, meaning that he'll be stuck at 3 loyalty, and we'll be able to burn it out with the Insult to Injury. That means that we'll be able to get the Reality Chip and the Jace. Instead going for the Benevolent Geist. Non-creature spells you control can't be countered, we're not going to do that anyway. And out comes Jace, so time to see if they Fate Seal us or not. They do correctly. So yeah, looks like our opponent is allowing us to keep a land. A couple of basics away from the Vellicut being switched on. So we could afford to go for the Embereth Blaze and the Virtue of Courage, but I think we're best going for the Shock. On this will be 4 damage, and then this will be a further 4, so we can deal with the Commander and the Jace. So we'll do that here. Unfortunately doing all this without our Commander being in play. But there we deal with the Commander and the Jace, 2 cards in our opponent's hand, and they can't do anything off the top. So yeah, looking to get down both our Commander and the Virtue of Courage, hopefully, which could be a big ask in 1v1, especially when we haven't seen any ramp. And our opponent does have time with the Azcanta now. Okay, we see a Propaganda, not desperate, swinging at our opponent. And then the Reality Chip comes down again straight away, so still with those 2 cards in hand. We're just going to want to re-equip the Reality Chip next turn, I imagine. There is another mountain, so 1 more mountain off the top will start to become lightning bolts for the Vellicut. Get our commander down here, I think. And if we manage to stick our commander, we can actually just go straight into the Maw of Hell, because that will be 13 damage, actually 26 damage onto a creature. And that'll be doubled again when it goes onto our opponent. So it's a case of challenging our opponent to get rid of the Imodane here. Equipping the Reality Chip to the Geist. And of course our opponent has control magic. 2 cards in hand, so I think he played that from his hand. In comes the Geist again. Deals 4 damage to us. So I think we have to take a turn off to go for the Virtue here. We see a Codex Shredder. Right, there is an Unholy Heat, which is switched on with Delirium. So our opponent grabbed our commander in just the nick of time, because obviously everything in this deck deals damage to creatures, and we need Imodane in play for it. Our opponent might have counter magic that he wants to use. Okay, going to mill himself, and that's in order to see different cards with the Reality Chip, of course. So put our commander in the command zone. We're going to need a land to get down our commander, unfortunately. We see a Sky Diamond for our opponent, a land off the top. This is thanks to the Reality Chip remaining equipped. We had to burn our commander as opposed to this, unfortunately. A Mystic Remora came down for our opponent for more card advantage. And then Vendilion Click to remove the Maw of Hell from our hands, so we'll draw into something else here. Alright, and that is a Soul Seer this time, so it's at least damage again, but it's going to be 10 damage onto the creature, then 20 damage, so they'll remain at 3 with this. Omen of the Sea draws them another card after a Scry 2. And then shuffling with the Scalding Tongue because they don't like what they see on top of the library. And that is into a Mind Stone. Still 3 cards in hand, so they are playing cards off the top here. And down to 2 cards, a Cloud of Fairies. Gives us more burn targets at least. But they untap their Nykthos and as counter. Then milling a land off the top again with the Codex Shredder. Like I said before, there are combos with this where you can infinitely mill your opponent, so not sure if they're running this or not, or if it is just for the card filtering. Hitting us again for 4 in the red zone. Okay, so we just need to tap out into our commander here. We drew into Cathartic Pyre, which is another means of burn at least, and that does manage to come down. So we'll see if our opponent has another means of control magic. Nope. It is Petty Theft, so they'll be able to play that out as a Brazen Borrower this turn if they want to. Going to mill a card with the Codex Shredder, it's another land they reveal. So in typical mono blue fashion, our opponent's buying himself plenty of time here. 2 cards in hand and can play off the top still. Gets another land out in Lonely Sandbar. That was off the top. And then it is the Venser, so they'll bounce the damage doubler I imagine. No, it is the Valakut, so worried about a lightning bolt if we manage to get into a basic. 12 mana being generated by the Nykthos, you can see why they wanted to protect that thing now. A Scry 2 from Omen of the Sea, and able to put some permanents on top. That is a Jace Beleren, so we'll be able to draw a card with that. Goes down by -1 to draw a card for himself, and then for the first time activating the Sunken Ruin, and revealing to us a Sol Ring with that. So playing out the Sol Ring immediately. So seeing a Lightning Bolt here would be excellent. This is 6 damage doubled up to 12. We've gone down to the Furnace of Wrath just as much as we've taken our opponents down to it. Your opponents managed to control the game then. Pretty bad going for you sometimes. A Light Up the Stage could help us. So Cathartic Pyre for 3 damage onto a creature would be good. We have to get down our commander. And we will be making use of the Virtue of Courage for the first time here as well. So not going to play a tap land in just yet, just in case we don't need to. Get rid of this Reality Chip equip. Mystic Remora can draw them a card. So it's 6 damage onto... of course they do. Ugh, it is a Fierce Guardianship, so they've had 2 free counter spells on us and 2 control magics, so yeah, can't feel too bad about losing this one. Play out the Valakut and... can our opponent get us next turn? That is 2, 5, 6, 7 and 8 is 16 damage. We can't block with the Imodane on the Venser because they'll trade. Yeah, so once again we're going down to our own Furnace of Wrath. I don't think they can play out the Brazen Borrower. Anyway, we'll just pass it over to our opponent then. And we see an Expropriate from our opponent, so has had too long with the Reality Chip playing off the top really. We'll just give him multiple turns here. Doesn't really matter, we've already lost this one. And hopefully our opponent doesn't play it out too long. All he really has to do is turn in sideways here. He knows what cards are in our hand. Seems to be playing with his food anyway. Fairy Master of Time just loots. Thieving Skydiver doesn't have a rock to steal. Frantic Search, we've already seen this video. Jace draws us both a card, which is pretty risky, but our opponent's at a healthy life total anyway. Confounding Conundrum, we're not going to ramp in this deck. A Sapphire Medallion. Taps the Nykthos for 16. Defiler of Dreams. Jace Vryn's Prodigy, with 2 life put into that. Snap will bounce our commander. Untapping the Nykthos and the Azcanta. A Kira will make it more difficult for us to burn their stuff anyway. Spreading Sea switches off the Valakut. A Caliphate, Beloved of the Sea. And Clever Impersonator, going down to 12 life. Becomes a copy of the Caliphate, Beloved of the Sea. But this is legendary, so the Clever Impersonator goes into the bin. An Opt, a High Tide. Not sure why he's playing High Tide. Not sure why he's playing any of this, to be honest. Maybe he's trying to storm off. Taps Nykthos down, so he's got 27 mana. Preordain. A Curiosity, enchant a creature. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you can draw. Putting that on the Vendilion Click. Trinket Mage. Thoracle with 22 cards in the library. 21 now that he's drawn. Okay, and then he just suddenly went down to 0 cards in hand. Yeah, lost track of something there. I was just reading out the names of the cards in the end, but a Thassa's Oracle win in the end, so hopefully you all enjoyed that one. That was a classic mono blue control build versus mono red burn, and control came out on top here, as it often will. We'll play another one. Haven't really seen too much of the commander itself, actually. Up against Eowyn this time, and yeah, again, there's no ramp there either, so yeah, I think we're going to mulligan. I'm hoping that the Jeskai player doesn't ramp either. That's looking a lot better. We will keep that, and we'll have to get rid of the City on Fire because we're nowhere close to it. We are on the place, so throw out a mountain ready for the Ruby Medallion and a turn 3 commander. It was an Evolving Wilds cracked into a mountain for our opponent. We will hold on to the Scalding Tarn just in case we want to go for an instant speed Valakut at some point. We'll be able to do that. That's pretty much the only trick we can do with the lands, unless we know what cards on top of our library we might want to shuffle. But not likely that will happen in this deck. A Humble Defector for our opponent will draw 2 cards, so that will just bounce around between the two of us, seemingly. A Mizium Mortars is a one-sided board wipe. 3 mountains in play takes us into Imodane for 1 less mana. Our opponent has to activate the Humble Defector during his turn, so can't do it at the end of ours. Might just use it as a chump blocker. Banishing Light is going to remove the Imodane. 5 cards left in our opponent's hand. Have to send our commander back to the exile zone. Or back to the command zone instead of the exile zone. 2 damage from the Defector. There's another mountain for us, so play that. Could go for some burn onto our opponent, but Mizium Mortars should deal with it nicely. I think we'll hold on to the Lightning Bolt to hopefully deal some double or triple damage at some point. But we keep coming up against blue players, so it might be difficult to get things through. Deciding to draw 2 cards, so this being given to us, and they get out a tapped Path of Ancestry. Not sure if this is... yeah, this might be a precon that we're playing up against here. Everything is from the Lord of the Rings set here, so Bastion Protector will make the commander indestructible, but it will still have the damage markers on it from Mizium Mortars. When this goes down, it will also get debuffed, so the 4 damage markers and the 4 toughness will still kill this off. Anyway, we get into the mountain we needed, so go for the Imodane. Do we draw first? Let's give him this thing back. Our opponent might be able to remove it during his turn. Gets into Blasphemous Act and Unholy Heat. Good to get those cards in hand. Obviously don't have another human entering play under their control this turn. But that is a 7/6, so maybe getting down the Stuffy Doll would be an idea. There's a Flame Slash. So we've got plenty of cheap burn here. Don't have the Delirium on this, so good time to crack the Scalding Tarn. We'll be able to put a land, an instant and a sorcery in the bin. Won't quite be able to get us up to the Delirium. We need another card type in there for that to be relevant. So we'll go for the Stuffy Doll, obviously going to name our only opponent on that, so whenever this is dealt damage, our opponent is dealt that much damage. And this goes well with damage doublers as well, which we don't have in play at the moment, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think we can just Lightning Bolt onto the Bastion Protector, and then that will deal 3 damage to our opponent. And there's no point swinging into a 5/4 First Striker. Our opponent drawing more cards with the Humble Defector. So maybe we can go for that, and then a Mizium Mortars next turn to buy ourselves some time. That's a Talisman for our opponent. And then tapping out a Door of Destinies. Obviously going to name Human with that, because this is a Jeskai Humans build that our opponent's bought here. And there's not much sense in our opponent swinging in here, because we just chump with the Stuffy Doll all day. Alright, that is a Into the Maw of Hell again, so maybe we'll actually be able to make some use of it. Let's go for the Humble Defector, handing it over to our opponent again. Gets us into a land for the turn. Got Shatter Skull Smashing as well that we can maybe dump some mana into. But I think for now we'll just go for a Flame Slash and force them to recast their commander again. So that's 4 damage to the commander. It'll be 4 damage from the Imodane as well. And then if they replay their commander, we can fight it with the Stuffy Doll. And then I'm going to go for the Unholy Heat now, because it doesn't seem as though we're going to be able to get Delirium on that, and I don't want our opponent drawing into removal for the Imodane. Don't want to get into the same situation we were in yesterday. So just get rid of that now. We can actually start swinging in here. So it's 4 commander damage onto our opponent. Increasing Devotion now. We'll make 5 human tokens, gives us plenty of targets. Don't have any buffs from the Door of Destinies yet. Obviously missing lands to get their commander back in there, because you'd want to cast that into your commander preferably. We'll tap down the Stuffy Doll. It can deal a damage to itself and therefore to our opponent. Okay, another land for us in the Bloodstained Mire. Yeah, holding up the Mizian Mortars should be fine, I think, so we might as well go for Into the Maws of Hell now. And we'll go for the Path of Ancestry, making it less likely that they'll get into their commander again, but we don't want to do nothing this turn. Oh, of course, that makes it 2 targets, doesn't it? So, yeah, that means that it's not good for Imodane. Playing out a Denethor now, and a Gimli. Alright, we'll go Shatterskull Smashing onto the blue creature here. We can put 8 mana into X here, because it costs 1 less. That'll obviously be 8 damage onto our opponent, as well as getting rid of the creature. Okay, I'm having trouble with the Shatterskull Smashing thing here. I can choose 1 target, I bump it up to 8, and then say done, and it won't let me do it for some reason. Oh, okay, awesome. And then I accidentally put 1 into X. Incredible. Alright, let's just overload this Mizian Mortars, so that we're actually using this mana that we've got floating. And then we can actually swing into our opponent for some more commander damage here. Obviously, ping the Stuffy Doll at the end of the turn. In fact, we'll just do it now. I don't think our opponent's going to get haste into play. Our opponent just playing out the AoE again. Alright, and we draw into Jeska's Will to make up for that previous play. So, play that out, we'll generate 5 mana and exile the top 3. Gets us into Forbidden Orchard to make creatures with. Swiftfoot Boots we can play and equip, and Shivan Meteor is obviously some burn. We can deal 13 damage to our opponent with that. So we should have our opponent here, give our opponent a creature. Shivan Meteor going on to the Aowen. We'll deal 13 damage, knocking our opponent down to 7. And then we'll just go for the Blasphemous Act. So this will deal 13 damage, it'll take out the Imodane, but it will deal 13 damage to the Stuffy Doll, which will be pointed directly at our opponent. That's why Stuffy Doll and the Indestructible Goblin are in here, for some sense of redundancy, because we might have our Imodane taken away from us, as we saw in previous games, might not have targets, or at least targeted burn in our hand, might not have targets to burn our opponent either. So those are some good redundancy for the deck. You must include those in your deck if you're going to build Imodane, I think. Yeah, a little bit sketchy towards the end there, because I don't think I was miscalculating. I'm sure we could put 8 into X on that Shatterskull, but Magic Online wasn't allowing it for whatever reason. Hopefully you all enjoyed the Imodane revisit. It's a really strong commander, but it can be tricky to get into the right draws in typical mono-red fashion, so if everything goes swimmingly, then you can absolutely decimate your opponent, and if not, you just tread water for way too long. So it's a real hit and miss commander in classic mono-red chaotic style. Big thank you to you all for watching. Huge thank you to the patrons as well for their constant support. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.